Good morning, class. Thank you for visiting my post for week 10. And to start out for this week's question, I first wanted to talk about Jordan and why I found that the same events in Lebanon and Syria haven't occurred in Jordan and why it is so stable. And I've broken this down into three aspects, and these three aspects are: they learn their position within the Arab world, the growing economic factors, and the political system. So, as far as Jordan learning their position within the Arab world, leaders from Jordan understood what the country needed to survive, whether it was economic help from Britain, and they learned what they needed to stay away from in order to remain a stable country. The book told us this week that the country avoided the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, and the country avoided this because the regimes believed another wartime loss could completely end the country. So the country knew that if they became involved in this war, then the country may be no longer. So they decided to stay out of it, which was a very smart position to take, and they understood what their country could handle as well as what their country could not handle. The country did help other countries when they felt as if they could help. For instance, the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, Jordan offered a port to Iran. So the country never became fully evolved if they believed it could harm themselves. And then another factor is the growing economics. 4/5 of the country is desert, and the country relies heavily on trade, with that trade being based heavily from Britain. And then the King Abdullah II understood that economic development was and should be a main priority. So he created free trade and investment in zones. The country also allowed non-governmental organizations, NGO organizations, to hold development projects within the country. And this varies from other Arab countries because many Arab countries will not let NGO organizations come in their country or function within their country because they don't want the help. So Jordan allowed these non-governmental organizations to come in and establish protecting nature preserves and are finding other ways to help the country. Unlike, like I said, many other Arab countries are not allowing these NGO organizations. And then another factor that makes Jordan so stable is the political system. The king adjusted policies to adapt to changes in opinion. So the king was willing to work with the leftists, the Islamic fundamentalists within the country to try and create more stability. So the king appointed a 66-member commission with leaders from the leftists to fundamentalists and wrote a charter that addressed all important issues on both sides. These issues vary from the equality of women to education, labor laws, and it kept going. And many became more accepting of the monarchy because the king did this. So therefore the monarchy is willing to understand the needs of all opposition and groups within the country to attempt to decrease regimes retaliating against him. And the book went on to continue to address that the regimes and these opposition groups began to have less influence as the 1980s and the 1990s on to the 2000s began. And I believe this was because the important issues on both sides were addressed. So the king was more willing to look at all important issues that even members from the opposition believed, whereas in other countries and in Lebanon and Syria, they were not always willing to look at the opposition and both sides of the spectrum. Other factors that I just wanted to list really quick were Jordan is a new country, newer than Syria and Lebanon, so they're more able to adapt more modern ideas and have less opposition because there's no traditional ideas that have been around for centuries, and they're not having to change policies that have been around since the 1500s, like in Lebanon, and so on. And then Jordan is made up of mainly refugees from other countries, like Palestine. So having so many refugees that makes up a large vast of your population, it makes it easy because the refugees are seeking something better. They were running away from. So by Jordan establishing something better for these refugees, it creates less opposition, less likely for a civil war to begin in the country like it did in Lebanon. So really quickly, just to throw out some factors from Syria and Lebanon that make a better distinction of how different those countries are and why those countries collapsed, are because Syria had problems that inhibit economic growth. They had a small private banking system, no stock market to organize capital. They had outdated technologies. Syria was involved in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, which proved to also financially hurt the country being involved. Syria had a lack of a political system early on. There was various different constitutions, which makes it difficult to unify a country. There are many different cabinets within the country, which makes so many people becoming involved and it becoming hard to find some cohesiveness within the government. In Lebanon, the civil war lasted 15 years, which crippled the economy and caused so many deaths within the country. The war didn't end until 1990, which the country is still trying, which wasn't so long ago. So the country is still trying to recover from the civil war. And the history of Lebanon dates back for centuries and centuries. So opposition is willing to occur and create these civil wars and problems within the country, as well as in Syria, because people become tired. If a country is around for so long, there becomes reasons for people to be tired of something. There becomes reasons for people to want to move away from the traditional values and find more modern ideas. Whereas in Jordan, it is such a new country. I think the main aspect of the history beginning in 1921 leads it to adopt more modern ideas quickly and early on, and less people want to change these modern ideas because they haven't seen the way traditional ideas were, and there really is no opposition because it's hard to oppose something when the history isn't that long. So thanks for visiting my post this week. Just to recap, the main reasons that Jordan is different and is stable is because they learned their position in the Arab world, the growing economics, and the stable political system with the monarchy willing to work with opposition. So thanks for visiting this week.